Between 1850 and 1864, somewhere between 20 and 30 million people died. This was not a world war. It was one man's dream, and it started when he failed an exam. His name was Hong Xiuquan. He was a Hakka farmer's son from Guangdong, brilliant enough that his entire village pooled resources to send him to the imperial examination. He studied for years. He sat the exam in 1836. He failed. He sat it again in 1837. He failed again. He had a breakdown so severe, he was bedridden for weeks, seeing visions of heaven, of an old man, of a middle-aged man who gave him a sword and told him to destroy demons. He sat the exam a third time in 1838. He failed. He sat it a fourth time in 1843. He failed. Then he reread a Christian pamphlet he had been given 6 years earlier, and suddenly, everything made sense. The old man in his visions was God. The middle-aged man was Jesus. And Hong Xiuquan, 4-time exam failure, farmer's son, nobody, was Jesus' younger brother, sent to China to destroy demons, which, as it happened, meant the Qing Dynasty. What followed was the deadliest civil war in recorded history. More people died than in World War I. The Keju, the Imperial Civil Service examination, was one of the most demanding intellectual ordeals ever devised. It was also, theoretically, the only path to power in Qing China. A man of any birth could sit it. Pass, and you entered the educated ruling class. Fail, and you stayed exactly where you were. Hong Xiuquan was born January 1st, 1814, in Huaxian County in Guangdong Province, present-day Huadu District, northwest of Guangzhou. His family was Hakka, a Chinese subgroup whose ancestors had migrated south centuries earlier, who spoke a distinct dialect and who occupied a second-tier social position in Guangdong's layered ethnic landscape. The Hakka were not the bottom, but they were not the top. The examination was their ladder. Hong was gifted. His village saw it early and supported him. He passed the preliminary county examinations with ease. In Canton, modern Guangzhou, he sat the higher-level Keju. He failed. He returned and sat it again. He failed again. In 1837, after his second failure, something broke. He returned home to Huaxian and collapsed. For weeks he lay in bed, delirious, experiencing vivid hallucinations. A radiant old man with a golden beard, a middle-aged man who called him brother, demons being cut down with a celestial sword. His family feared he was dying. He recovered. He sat the exam again in 1838. Failed. He lived with the failure for 5 more years, teaching in a village school, carrying the humiliation quietly. In 1843, he failed for the 4th and final time. Returning home, he picked up a pamphlet he had been given 6 years earlier at the examination hall. Good Words for Exhorting the Age, written by Liang Afa, a Chinese Protestant evangelist. He read it slowly, and as he read, his visions rearranged themselves into a framework that made complete sense. The old man was God the Father. The middle-aged man was Jesus Christ. The demons he had destroyed with a sword were the demons of false worship, idolatry, the old gods, the Qing rulers who permitted them. He had not been hallucinating. He had been receiving a mission. Hong began preaching his new theology in 1843, quietly at first, among family and close friends. His cousin Hong Rengan became an early convert. His friend Feng Yunshan was more important still. Feng traveled deep into Guangxi province and spent years building a congregation among the Hakka farming communities and charcoal-burning miners of the remote Thistle Mountain region. What Feng built, and what Hong then inherited, was the God-worshipping society, Bai Shang Dihui. Its appeal was not purely theological. The 1840s were an era of profound social dislocation in southern China. The First Opium War, 1839-1842, had flooded the region with cheap silver, disrupting local economies. Unemployment among laborers and miners was severe, and the Hakka communities, always slightly outside the Cantonese mainstream, had particular grievances with a Qing bureaucracy they perceived as indifferent to their interests. Hong Xiuquan offered them something the examination system never had: a world where they were not outsiders. In the Taiping theology, the Hakka poor were God's chosen people. The Qing Dynasty, ethnically Manchu, and therefore, in Hong's framing, a dynasty of foreign demons occupying China, was the legitimate target of a divinely mandated uprising. This was not just religion. It was revolutionary politics in theological costume. By 1850, the God-worshipping society had tens of thousands of members. They had pooled their possessions into communal funds. They had begun drilling. They were armed. On January 11th, 1851, Hong Xiuquan proclaimed the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Taiping Tianguo. He declared himself the Heavenly King, Tianwang. The rebellion had begun. What followed was one of the most rapid military expansions in 19th century history. The Taiping moved north and east from Guangxi with terrifying momentum, sweeping through Hunan and along the Yangtze River. They captured city after city. In March 1853, they took Nanjing, China's southern capital and one of the greatest cities in the empire, and renamed it Tianjin, the heavenly capital. It would remain their capital for 11 years. At its peak, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom controlled a territory with an estimated 30 million subjects. It was not a provisional movement. It was a functioning state, with its own bureaucracy, its own calendar, its own theology as the official state religion, its own examinations, based on the Christian Bible rather than Confucian texts, and its own military hierarchy. The social program was radical by any standard. Private land ownership was to be abolished and land redistributed equally. Opium was banned. Footbinding was banned. Prostitution was banned. Men and women were to be treated equally under law. The Taiping ran separate military units for women, something essentially unprecedented in Chinese history. And then there were the contradictions. Hong Xiuquan, the man who preached Christian equality, took 88 concubines. He withdrew almost entirely from governance by the mid-1850s, spending his days in the heavenly capital's inner palace, accessible only to his innermost circle, issuing theological proclamations while his military commanders fought the actual war. The senior kings beneath him, the Eastern King, the Northern King, the Western King, accumulated their own power and began fighting each other. In 1856, the heavenly capital incident, the Eastern King Yang Shuqing was assassinated along with thousands of his followers in a purge ordered or permitted by Hong Xiuquan himself. The movement began to consume itself. The Qing Dynasty's initial response to the Taiping was disastrous. The banner armies, the Manchu military system that had conquered China 2 centuries earlier, had ossified. They lost battle after battle. The Green Standard Army, the secondary Han Chinese force, was no better. For years, the Qing government watched helplessly as the Taiping held the Yangtze Valley. The turning point came not from the Qing imperial court, but from a Hunan scholar official named Zeng Guofan. Zeng organized something new, the Xiang army, a regionally funded force built on personal loyalty networks and Confucian values, a deliberate ideological counter to the Taiping's Christian theology. Where the Taiping were apocalyptic and egalitarian, Zeng's soldiers were conservative and hierarchical. He funded them himself through local taxation and donations from Hunan gentry. He trained them personally, and he ground them into an effective fighting force through the brutal arithmetic of attrition. He also accepted foreign assistance. The ever-victorious army, a Western-trained Chinese force initially commanded by the American mercenary Frederick Townsend Ward, and later by the British officer Charles Gordon, Chinese Gordon, proved particularly effective in the Yangtze Delta, using Western infantry tactics and artillery against Taiping strongholds. The war was total, and it was catastrophic. Cities were besieged and starved. Populations fled. The fertile Yangtze Valley, China's agricultural heartland, was depopulated across wide stretches. The dead were counted in millions per year. By 1862, Zeng Guofan had surrounded Nanjing. The siege would last nearly 2 years. Inside Tianjin, the situation was becoming desperate. Food ran short. Hong Xiuquan, increasingly disconnected from reality, reportedly refused to believe the siege would succeed. When his commanders told him the city was starving, he ordered them to eat manna from heaven, the weeds and wild grass growing in the city's courtyards and streets. His generals ate. His people ate. Hong Xiuquan died on June 1st, 1864. The exact cause is disputed. Qing sources say illness from eating weeds. Some accounts suggest he took poison. He was 50 years old. He did not live to see the end he had set in motion. Nanjing fell on July 19, 1864. The Qing forces under Zeng Guofan's brother, Zeng Guoquan, breached the walls. What followed was a massacre of the remaining Taiping holdouts, tens of thousands, killed in a single day. Hong's 15-year-old son, the nominal new heavenly king, was captured weeks later and executed. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was over. In 14 years, it had killed between 20 and 30 million people. Hong Xiuquan never doubted his mission. He believed to the end that he was the Son of God, sent to liberate China from the demons of the Qing Dynasty. He was wrong about his identity, and catastrophically confident about his purpose. The combination, absolute certainty, military force, 14 years, produced one of the most lethal episodes in human history. But his failure was not simply forgotten. Sun Yat-sen, who would lead the revolution that finally ended the Qing Dynasty in 1912, called Hong Xiuquan, a forerunner of the revolution. Mao Zedong cited the Taiping as precursors to communist land reform. The radical equality Hong Xiuquan preached, however corrupted in practice, echoed forward into the 20th century. He failed 4 examinations designed to identify men worthy of governing China. He spent the rest of his life proving the examiners right and wrong simultaneously.